For 25 years, my life was a masterpiece of domestic perfection. Every throw pillow was fluffed, every school lunch was nutritionally balanced and Instagram-worthy, every holiday was a meticulously staged event. My identity was forged in the kiln of motherhood, glazed with the approval of my peers, and fired to a perfect glossy finish. I was the CEO of the Carter household. Then, one Tuesday in September, my youngest son left for college. And in the deafening silence of my perfectly clean, perfectly organized, perfectly empty house, I realized the terrifying truth. The masterpiece was hollow, and so was I.
That feeling of a life's purpose suddenly vanishing is a quiet crisis for so many women. Today, we're sharing the powerful story of Emily Carter from suburban Dallas, Texas, a woman who had to dismantle a perfect life to find her true self. I'm your host, Susan Bentley, and this is Unbroken Women, where we explore the incredible strength it takes to rebuild from the inside out. Welcome, Emily.
My world smelled of lemon polish and fresh-baked sourdough. It sounded like the hum of the sub-zero fridge, the rhythmic chime of the dryer finishing a load of lacrosse uniforms, and the happy chaos of 3 children bursting through the door after school. My days were a blur of color-coded calendars and carpool logistics. I was a master of efficiency. I knew which grocery store had the best organic kale on Wednesdays and the precise moment to pull the roast chicken from the oven so it was perfectly juicy for dinner at 6:30 p.m. sharp. My husband, Mark, a wonderful man, called me the magician. He saw the effortless-looking results, not the frantic paddling beneath the surface. My life was a series of beautifully curated squares on social media. Hashtag blessed mom. Hashtag family first. Hashtag making memories. Each post, each filtered photo of a family vacation or a perfectly decorated birthday cake was another brick in the fortress I'd built around myself. It was a good life, a privileged life. Everyone said so. I had everything a woman was supposed to want. And for a long time, I think I even convinced myself that I wanted it too. There was a faint memory of a girl who wanted to design parks and public spaces, but she was buried deep under PTA meeting minutes and a mountain of perfectly folded laundry. But perfection is heavy. It's a full-time job with no salary and no days off. The weight wasn't just in the doing. It was in the maintaining of the image of doing it all, effortlessly. It was the constant, low-grade hum of anxiety that started the moment I opened my eyes. Did I remember to sign the permission slip? Is Josh's science project creative enough? What will the other moms think if I bring a store-bought dessert to the bake sale? My own needs, my own thoughts, my own desires were so far down the priority list, they'd fallen off the page entirely. I wasn't Emily anymore. I was Josh's mom, Sarah's mom, Ben's mom. My identity was a reflection in their eyes. Their successes were my successes. Their failures, my personal shame. I was shrinking, becoming a beautifully dressed ghost haunting my own home, ensuring everyone else's happiness while my own slowly, quietly starved to death. The first crack appeared on a Tuesday afternoon. The house was quiet for a rare hour, and I was scrolling through my own Instagram feed. It looked like the life of a stranger. A very happy, very organized stranger. I saw a photo of myself at Ben's graduation party, beaming, surrounded by my beautiful family. But I remembered that moment. I remembered the tightness in my chest, the frantic mental checklist I was running through. Is there enough ice? Did Aunt Carol say something passive-aggressive to my sister? Are the caterers keeping the appetizers warm? I wasn't in the moment. I was producing it. A little whisper, cold and sharp, slithered into my mind. When was the last time you just were? When was the last time you did something just for you with no audience, no photo, no one to approve? I swiped the app closed. The thought so foreign and selfish, it felt like a betrayal. I went to the kitchen and started kneading bread, punishing the dough, pushing the whisper down with the heels of my hands until it was silent again. The trigger wasn't a gunshot. It was the closing of a car door, the last one. Ben, my youngest, was off to college. I helped him unpack his dorm room, smoothing the new comforter on his bed, stocking his mini fridge with his favorite drinks. I held it together, playing the role of the proud, supportive mom. I hugged him tight, the fabric of his new university sweatshirt rough against my cheek. I whispered, "Call me anytime. I love you." He smiled, already looking past me toward his new roommate. "Love you too, Mom. I'll be fine." I walked back to my car, the campus buzzing with the energy of new beginnings. For everyone else, I got in, closed the door, and the silence that fell was absolute. It wasn't peace. It was a vacuum. It was the sound of my job, my purpose, my entire identity driving away in a cloud of exhaust. I drove the 3 hours home in a daze. I walked into the house, and the quiet was a physical presence. No muddy cleats by the door, no backpack slung over a chair, no music blasting from an upstairs bedroom. The house was exactly as I'd left it. Perfect, pristine, and utterly soul-crushingly empty. It was a museum of a life that was no longer being lived. And I was the lonely curator. My first instinct was to fill the silence. I deep-cleaned closets that were already clean. I alphabetized the spice rack. I planned a new, more elaborate fall wreath for the front door. This was just a transition, I told myself. It's called empty nest syndrome. It's normal. I'd find new projects. I could redecorate the kids' rooms. I could join another committee. I clung to the familiar, the architecture of my old life, even as its inhabitants had all moved out. But fear was a cold dread in my stomach. What now? Who was I, if not their mother? The question was a black hole that threatened to swallow me whole. My entire social life revolved around the kids, the other team moms, the parents from their schools. What would we talk about now? My friends would call. "You must have so much free time," they'd say, their voices tinged with envy. "You can do anything you want." But the freedom felt like a punishment. It was a vast, terrifying, empty ocean, and I'd forgotten how to swim. The thought of stepping outside the role I had perfected for decades was paralyzing. Being Emily, the perfect mom, was safe. Being just Emily? I didn't even know who that was anymore. The breaking point came, as it so often does, with a holiday. Thanksgiving. I threw myself into the planning with a manic energy. This would be the anchor, the proof that everything was still the same. I planned a menu for 12, even though Mark's parents were spending the holiday in Florida. I bought new linens. I ordered a heritage turkey. I wanted it to be so perfect, so magnetic, that it would pull all my scattered children back home. Then the calls came. First, Sarah, my eldest. "Mom, I'm so sorry, but Ryan's family invited us to ski in Colorado. We can't say no." Then Josh. "Hey, Mom, a bunch of us are doing a Friendsgiving thing on campus. It's just easier." And finally, Ben. "Mom, it's my first year. I really want to go home with my roommate. His family is amazing." Each call was a precise surgical cut to my heart. I kept smiling. I kept saying, "Of course, honey, I understand. Have fun."
On Thanksgiving morning, I got up. I set the dining room table. All 12 places. The good china, the crystal, the perfectly folded napkins. Then I stood there in the silent house, staring at the long, empty, beautiful table. A feast for ghosts. The void I'd been running from had finally caught me. It wasn't a whisper anymore. It was a scream. I didn't cry. I just stood there, my hands flat on the polished wood, and felt something inside me shatter into a million irreparable pieces.
That night, after Mark was asleep, I sat in the dark with my laptop. I opened Instagram. I scrolled through years of my life. A highlight reel. It was all there. The first days of school, the toothless grins, the championship games, the family portraits where we all wore coordinating shades of blue. It was a beautiful lie. Not because the moments weren't real, but because they were the only story I had allowed myself to tell. It was an identity I had curated, and now it was a cage. My finger hovered over my profile page. It had thousands of followers, women who'd comment, "You're an inspiration." It was my validation, my proof of worth. And in that moment, I knew I had to burn it all down. With a shaking hand, my heart pounding a frantic, terrified rhythm against my ribs, I navigated to the settings menu. The question on the screen felt monumental. Are you sure you want to deactivate your account? For the first time in forever, I made a decision that wasn't for my husband or my kids or what the neighbors might think. It was for me. I clicked confirm.
The next morning, the silence in my head was as profound as the silence in my house. My thumb kept reflexively going to the empty spot on my phone's home screen where the Instagram icon used to be. The impulse to check, to post, to perform was a phantom limb. It felt like I'd cut off a part of myself. There was no one to show the perfect latte I'd made, no one to validate the crisp autumn morning with a filtered photo. I was invisible, and it was terrifying. But mixed with the terror was a tiny, fragile spark of something else. Relief. Exhilaration. For the first time in years, I made breakfast and just ate it. I didn't arrange the berries on my oatmeal in a photogenic swirl. I just ate. I went for a walk and didn't look for the perfect angle that captured the changing leaves. I just looked at them. The world seemed sharper, more real without the screen in between. It was a small, quiet rebellion, a secret I kept with myself. I had stepped off the stage, and while the emptiness of the auditorium was daunting, at least I was no longer blinded by the spotlights.
The pushback came quickly. First, the texts. From Karen, the head of my mom tribe. "Emily, is everything okay? Your account is gone." Then another, from Lisa. "Just checking in. We miss your posts. Hope all is well." They were meant to be kind, but they felt like accusations, like I had broken some unspoken rule of our curated suburban existence. I'd gone offline, therefore I must be unwell. At book club, the questions were more direct. "Why would you delete it? All those beautiful memories." I tried to explain, mumbling something about needing a break, but they looked at me with a mixture of pity and confusion, as if I'd announced I was joining a cult. I had disrupted the narrative. I was no longer reflecting the perfect life back at them, and it made them uncomfortable. Mark was supportive, in his way. "Whatever makes you happy, Em." But he didn't understand. He couldn't grasp that the thing that was supposed to make me happy was the very thing that was suffocating me. The hardest part was the assumption that my unhappiness was a reflection on him, or the kids. It wasn't about them, and that was the problem. It was supposed to be.
For 25 years, my life was about them. To suddenly make it about me felt selfish, wrong, and deeply disorienting. For everyone, myself included. The loneliness was immense. I had stepped away from my tribe, and I had nothing to replace it with. The quiet days stretched into an endless expanse of time I didn't know how to fill. I'd wander through my silent, perfect house, a stranger in my own life. The voice of doubt was relentless. You've made a huge mistake. You've alienated everyone. What was so wrong with your life anyway? You had everything. I missed the easy validation, the little dopamine hit of 100 likes. It was a comforting, familiar drug. The pain of my old life felt known, manageable. This new emptiness felt wild and dangerous. I would find myself fantasizing about reactivating my account, about posting a picture of a new recipe, about slipping back into the comfortable costume of the perfect mom. It would be so easy. Just one click, and I could be her again. Just one click, and I could stop being so terrifyingly, completely alone. One long rainy Saturday, the dam broke. Mark was on a golf trip. The house was dark, and the silence was pressing in on me, suffocating me. I hadn't spoken to another human being in nearly 2 days, aside from the cashier at the grocery store. I sat on the floor of my pristine kitchen, the cold tiles seeping into my bones, and I sobbed, gut-wrenching, ugly sobs that came from a place so deep inside me I didn't know it existed. I had done it. I had successfully dismantled my life and was left with nothing. Absolutely nothing. I was a ghost, a failure. I picked up my phone, my hands shaking, my vision blurred with tears. I typed my old username into the login screen. I could go back. I could apologize. I could say I had a little breakdown, but I was fine now. I could go back to being the woman everyone recognized and understood. My finger hovered over the login button. Surrender felt so warm, so easy. It was the only thing that made sense. Just as I was about to press the button, my gaze drifted to a box in the corner of the pantry, one I hadn't touched in years. It was a storage box labeled college. Something compelled me to get up, to pull it down. It was filled with old textbooks and sorority t-shirts, but at the very bottom, beneath everything else, was a heavy, leather-bound portfolio. My portfolio, from my landscape architecture degree. My fingers, trembling, traced the embossed letters of my maiden name on the cover. I opened it. Inside were detailed, intricate drawings of parks, public gardens, and urban green spaces. They were beautiful. They were passionate. They were me. A version of me I had forgotten existed. A woman who loved the curve of a pathway, the texture of stone, the science of what makes things grow. A single tear dropped onto a drawing of a rooftop garden, smudging the ink. It wasn't a tear of sadness. It was a tear of recognition. I remembered her, and in that moment, I knew I couldn't let her down again. The next Monday, I did something terrifying. I drove to the local community college and enrolled in a Master Gardener program. Just for me. No one else. The first class was humbling. I was the oldest person there, surrounded by pierced millennials and earnest retirees. I felt like an imposter. But as the instructor started talking about soil composition and perennial zones, something clicked back into place. That old part of my brain, the part that loved systems and design and nature, woke up. I started small. I ripped out the perfectly manicured, boring boxwoods in my front yard and planted a chaotic, colorful butterfly garden. My neighbors were confused. It wasn't neat. It wasn't controlled. It was wild and alive. Then I found an unused, neglected patch of land behind the public library and petitioned the city to let me start a community garden. I put up flyers. Slowly, people showed up. A retired teacher with a passion for tomatoes, a young father who wanted his daughter to see where food comes from. We weren't a mom tribe. We were just people with dirt under our fingernails working together. My life is no longer Pinterest perfect. My hair is often messy, tied back in a bandana. There's usually a smudge of dirt on my cheek, and my fingernails will never be pristine again. My house isn't always spotless, but it's full of life. It's full of seedlings under grow lights and books on horticulture stacked on the coffee table. My phone is full of pictures of tomato blossoms and interesting beetles, not perfectly staged family moments. I've found my identity not in reflecting my children's lives, but in cultivating my own. The quiet anxiety that used to be the soundtrack to my life has been replaced by a quiet, steady peace. I am no longer a reflection. I am the source. Sometimes I think about that woman, standing alone at her perfect Thanksgiving table. I don't feel pity for her. I feel a profound sense of gratitude. I want to tell her, thank you. Thank you for being strong enough to shatter. Thank you for walking through the terror of that emptiness, because on the other side of it wasn't a void. It was just soil. Rich, fertile soil, waiting for you to finally plant something for yourself. Your greatest performance was not raising perfect children. It was letting yourself fall apart so you could finally grow.
Thank you, Emily, for sharing that incredible story of rebirth. What a powerful reminder that our identities can have more than one season. If Emily's journey resonated with you, please share your own story in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe to Unbroken Women for more stories of transformation. And if you'd like to hear another, click on the video on your screen right now. Until next time, be gentle with yourselves.